On December 27, 1892, Livingstone and Biddle College, now known as Johnson C. Smith University, played in Salisbury, North Carolina, with Biddle winning 5-0. Over time, HBCU football has evolved. HBCU football's popularity continues to rise. Millions attend games each year and millions more watch on television. The HBCU bands provide some of the top entertainment in the country. Over that time, some of the best players to ever play in the National Football League played at HBCUs. Every Monday through Friday on the HBCU Football Daily Podcast, national radio and television host Donal Ware takes a look at what's happening in HBCU football and talks with coaches, players, administrators, and media about the season. Make sure you join the conversation on social media now. Here's your host, Donal Ware.
You've got it locked to the HBCU Football Daily Podcast for today, Monday, September 11th. I'm Donal Ware. It's Manic Monday on the HBCU Football Daily Podcast. And I mean, first and foremost, we never want to forget September 11th of 2001, when the Twin Towers were attacked, burned to the ground, when the Pentagon was attacked, when there was a plane that was hijacked in Pennsylvania. Some heroic people on that plane brought that plane down before it did any damage to the greater population in Pennsylvania. So we never forget those that were on the ground, those that assisted those in need. Thank you for what you did. We never want to forget September 11th, 2001. Can't believe that's been 22 years ago today. So week 2 in HBCU football saw some interesting games, and I'll say this with respect to the HBCU National Games of the Week on last week. Big time win for Jackson State over Southern. I mentioned in the preview that the quarterback for Southern, Harold Blood, had to protect the football, and he threw a couple of interceptions in the game, was sacked 5 times. Jackson State put some pressure, unlike what Jackson State was able to do the week before against Florida A&M, who, by the way, Florida A&M's got a really good, is a really good football team. And I think if the Rattlers can minimize mistakes as well, I think the Rattlers win the SWAC. And I mean, if Florida A&M was participating in the playoffs this year, and I mean that still could be a possibility, the SWAC is wide open. I think Florida A&M could definitely do some damage, but a big win on the road by Jackson State. There were, 22,856 there. It was the Pete Richardson Classic there in Baton Rouge, and so a big win by Jackson State. And then the other game was North Carolina A&T and North Carolina Central. Big victory for North Carolina Central. The defending champs are 2-0 on the season. And I tell you what, Davius Richard, the quarterback, in the last 2 weeks, clearly the best player on the field. Now, you may look at his numbers. I don't have his numbers in front of me, but you may look at his numbers from a passing perspective. He didn't turn the ball. I don't even think he threw he didn't throw an interception, nor did he throw a touchdown. And his numbers, he was efficient. I would say he was efficient in the ball game, but he had like 11 carries for 95 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. He could pretty much do what he wanted. And there was a particular pass, and I think it may have been McCall, the receiver, where I was right there on the near sideline. I mean, he dropped a dime to McCall. I mean, this guy can play, and I'm really interested in seeing what he can do next week as the defending HBCU champs travel out to LA to take on UCLA. I mean, I think it's an absolutely fantastic opportunity for North Carolina Central to showcase its program. I think it's a tremendous opportunity for the MEAC. It's a tremendous opportunity for HBCUs as a whole. And think about this. It's a great opportunity, and you get paid for it. They get a guarantee for this game. So it's tremendous. But I'm really interested in seeing how Davius Richards is going to fare against UCLA. So let's look at the scoreboard. Week 2 in HBCU football, things kicked off on Thursday. Big win for West Virginia State. Duplicated the score from last week in its game against Morehead State, but this time came out on the other side with the victory, 37-35 in this football game. Donovan Riddick, I've been talking to you about this guy, this quarterback, really, really good. He had 3 touchdowns in the ball game, had 299 yards of total offense. And more importantly for the Yellow Jackets, yes, tough loss last week against Morehead State would have been great, but check this out. The Yellow Jackets begin the season 1-0 in Mountain East Conference play. And that's definitely important for the Yellow Jackets. I think this is the year the Yellow Jackets can really, really compete. Looking at Saturday's games, Bluefield State, first loss of the season, falling to Emory and Henry, 37-14. It was Central State falling to Dayton, 62-24. In the Down East Classic, down in Rocky Mount, Elizabeth City State defeated St. Aug's 13-0. South Carolina State now 0-3 on the season, falling to Georgia Tech 48-13. It was Howard all over Morehouse, 65-19. The Bison get in the win column for the first time this year. Johnson C. Smith losing a close game to Walsh, 14-9. First loss of the season for the Golden Bulls. Tuskegee now 2-0 on the season, also picks up an SIAC victory with the 36-10 victory over Kentucky State, who drops its first game of the season. Lincoln of Pennsylvania putting up 48 points against Post, defeating Post 48-32, and getting some really good quarterback play from Isaiah, the quarterback for Lincoln of Pennsylvania, and Isaiah Freeman. Look, that kid is good. He was a true freshman last year, had a solid season, going to raise his game and raising his game to another level as a sophomore. Virginia Lynchburg falling to Presbyterian, 48-17. It was Virginia Union over Shaw, 26-13. The Panthers now 2-0 on the season. The Bears drop to 0-2. Delaware State 0-2 on the season now after falling to Army, 57-0. Bowie State loses a close one, its first of the season, falling to Davenport, 24-19. Fort Valley State gets in the win column, 40-17 over Clark Atlanta. Virginia State now 2-0 on the season, defeating Tusculum 21-17. That's a big win for Virginia State, the Virginia State program, as Dr. Henry Frazier and the Trojans tried to. It's an out-of-conference win, no doubt. But listen, you got to get some of those wins. Ask Virginia Union last year when Virginia Union did not even play in the CIAA championship game, but because of some big out-of-conference wins, was able to get an at-large berth in the playoffs. Texas Southern falling to Toledo, 71-3. Texas Southern stepping up in play. Winston-Salem State falling to Ohio Dominican, 26-14. It was Bethune-Cookman getting its first victory of the season, 31-6 over Savannah State. Benedict 2-0 on the season, back-to-back weeks of shutouts, this time 34-0 over Edward Waters. So Benedict now has outscored its opponents in 2 games, 86-0 on the season. In a bit of a shocker, and remember, we talked about some D2s beating some FCS programs last week. That trend continues in a surprise, and I'm surprised. I don't know, I'm surprised, especially that Alabama State got the victory over Southern last week. Miles upsets Alabama State 21-17 in Montgomery. Alabama A&M getting its first victory of the season, 51-13 over Lane. In the Southern Heritage Classic, Tennessee State defeated Arkansas Pine Bluff 24-14 in that game. They had over 32,000 at that game. Over 32,000. Again, remember, this was the game perennially where Tennessee State and Jackson State played. Jackson State pulled out. Arkansas Pine Bluff comes in, close proximity to Memphis, and you get 32,000. I mean, I think that's over 32,000. I think that's a good crowd. I mean, years past, you've had 50,000 there at the Southern Heritage Classic. I think 32 is not bad. Over 32 there in Memphis. Texas College loses to Central Arkansas 70-2. As I mentioned before, Jackson State, big victory over Southern, 27-14. Again, look all the numbers. Irv Mulligan, over 100 yards rushing. He played well. The defense played really well as well. But now Jackson State is 2-1 on this season. Lincoln of Missouri falling to Missouri Western, 68-14. It was Arkansas Baptist falling to Louisiana Christian in conference play, 55-18. Prairie View A&M took one on the chin to Abilene Christian, 45-16. It was Alcorn falling to Stephen F. Austin, 38-10. Morgan State in a heartbreaker, fell to Akron, stepping up, falling to Akron, 24-21. The Bears were trying to run the clock out, had the 21-17 lead, less than a minute remaining, trying to run the clock out. Morgan fumbles the football. Akron takes it back 13 yards for the touchdown with like 40-some seconds remaining. The Bears lose a heartbreaker. But if you're Morgan State, if you're Damon Wilson, that Bear program is going in the right direction. The offense, I think, will come. The defense is absolutely spectacular. Watch for the Bears this season. Albany State falling to Valdosta State, 21-16. Tough loss for the Golden Rams. Allen all over Columbus State, 49-0. Livingstone falling to Catawba, 55-15. Both of those schools right there in Salisbury, North Carolina. Fayetteville State now 0-2 on the season, falling to Lenoir-Rhyne, 24-10. In the Battle of the Bay, Norfolk State defeated Hampton, 31-23. Grambling falling to LSU, 72-10. Close to 98,000 fans there in Baton Rouge. And think about that. You got two huge football games in Baton Rouge. Jackson State coming to Southern, and then Grambling to LSU. Big weekend in Louisiana, and specifically in Baton Rouge. North Carolina Central over North Carolina A&T, 30-16. And Florida A&M fell to South Florida, or USF, 38-24. Jeremy Musa, the quarterback, had 3 interceptions in the game. You got to figure it. And as a matter of fact, at one point, the Rattlers had a bit of a lead. You got to figure if Jeremy Musa could have maybe cut down on some of those turnovers, then, and I'm not saying they're all his fault. I'm just saying, or I should say maybe the Rattlers as a whole, then perhaps that's a game that may have been a little bit closer, maybe a game that Florida A&M could have won. But the Rattlers are really, really good. Isaiah Major in that game, boy, he had 11 tackles, 2 sacks, and 3 tackles for loss. Isaiah Major, boy, linebacker. He is absolutely phenomenal, and we'll continue to hear his name. Later on today, depending upon what time you're watching this HBCU Football Daily Podcast, Monday's a huge day. The HBCU coaches and media polls are released. The HBCU National Players of the Week are released as well. And there are quite a few players that are up for the award for the HBCU National Player of the Week. So that you can see why we call it Manic Monday here on the HBCU Football Daily Podcast. Don't forget to tell a couple of friends about the HBCU Football Daily Podcast. You can watch on the Box to Row YouTube channel, and you can download or listen at boxtorow.com as well as iHeartMedia.com. Don't forget, tomorrow, Takeaway Tuesday, I have my thoughts and takeaways from week 2 in HBCU football. Talk with you then.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the HBCU Football Daily Podcast. You can also listen to the podcast at boxtorow.com, iHeartMedia, or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to get your HBCU football fix on Box to Row with Donal Ware each weekend on the radio station near you, and on SiriusXM on HBCU, Channel 142, and on ESPNU Radio on SiriusXM, Channel 84. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Box to Row for the latest in HBCU football, and don't forget to tell a friend.